The Marginal Revolution. As the ideas of wealth and scarcity developed in economics, economists turned their attention to more specific questions about how markets operate and how market prices are determined. English economist William Stanley Jevons, 1835 to 1882, Austrian economist Karl Menger, 1840 to 1921, and French economist Léon Walras, 1834 to 1910, independently developed a new perspective in economics known as marginalism. Their key insight was that in practice, people aren't actually faced with big picture decisions over entire general classes of economic goods. Instead, they make their decisions around specific units of an economic good as they choose to buy, sell, or produce each additional or marginal unit. In doing so, people balance the scarcity of each good against the value of the use of the good at the margin. These decisions explain, for example, why the price of an individual diamond is relatively higher than the price of an individual unit of water. Though water is a basic need to live, it is often plentiful, and though diamonds are often purely decorative, they are scarce. Marginalism quickly became and remains a central concept in economics. Speaking in numbers, Walras went on to mathematize his theory of marginal analysis and made models and theories that reflected what he found. General equilibrium theory came from his work, as did the practice of expressing economic concepts statistically and mathematically instead of just in prose. Alfred Marshall took the mathematical modeling of economics to new heights, introducing many concepts that are still not widely understood, such as economies of scale, marginal utility, and the real cost paradigm. It's nearly impossible to expose an economy to experimental rigor. Therefore, economics is on the edge of science. Through mathematical modeling, however, some economic theory has been rendered testable. The theories developed by Walras, Marshall, and their successors would develop in the 20th century into the Neoclassical school of economics, defined by mathematical modeling and assumptions of rational actors and efficient markets. Later, statistical methods were applied to economic data in the form of econometrics, giving economists the ability to propose and test hypotheses empirically and in a methodologically rigorous manner. Keynes and Macroeconomics. John Maynard Keynes developed a new branch of economics known as Keynesian economics, or more generally, as macroeconomics. Keynes styled the economists who had come before him as classical economists, and he believed that while their theories might apply to individual choices and good markets, they did not adequately describe the operation of the economy as a whole. Instead of marginal units or even specific goods markets and prices, Keynesian macroeconomics presents the economy in terms of large-scale aggregates that represent the rates of unemployment, aggregate demand, or average price level inflation for all goods. Keynes's theory says that governments can be powerful players in the economy and save it from recession by implementing expansionary fiscal and monetary policy, manipulating government spending, taxing, and money creation in order to manage the economy. The Neoclassical synthesis. In the mid-20th century, these two strands of thought, mathematical, marginalist microeconomics and Keynesian macroeconomics, would rise to near complete dominance of the field of economics throughout the Western world. This became known as the Neoclassical synthesis, which has since represented the mainstream of economic thought as taught in universities and practiced by researchers and policymakers, with other perspectives labeled as heterodox economics. Within the neoclassical synthesis, various streams of economic thoughts have developed, sometimes in opposition to one another. The inherent tension between neoclassical microeconomics, which portrays free markets as efficient and beneficial, and Keynesian macroeconomics, which views markets as inherently prone to calamitous failure, has led to persistent academic and public policy disagreements, with different theories ascendant at different times. Various economists and schools of thought have sought to refine, reinterpret, redact, and redefine both neoclassic microeconomics and Keynesian macroeconomics. Most prominent is monetarism and the Chicago School, developed by Milton Friedman, which retains neoclassical microeconomics and the Keynesian macroeconomics framework, but shifts the emphasis of macroeconomics from fiscal policy, favored by Keynes, to monetary policy. Monetarism was widely exposed through the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s. Several different streams of economic theory and research have been proposed to resolve the tension between micro and macroeconomics by incorporating aspects or assumptions from microeconomics, such as rational expectations, into macroeconomics, or by further developing microeconomics to provide the micro foundations, such as price stickiness or psychological factors, for Keynesian macroeconomics. In recent decades, this has led to the development of new theories, such as behavioral economics, and to renewed interest in heterodox theories, such as Austrian school economics, which were previously relegated to the economic backwaters. Behavioral economics. Classical economic theory and theory of markets from Smith through Friedman, have rested largely on the assumption that consumers are rational actors who behave in their own best interests. Current economists such as Richard Thaler, Daniel Kahneman, Gary Becker, and the late Amos Tversky have shown that people often do not act in their own best material interests, but allow themselves to be swayed by non material psychological factors and biases. Behavioral economics has helped to popularize a number of new concepts that make economic modeling and forecasting more difficult than ever. These concepts include the sunk cost fallacy, continuing to invest in a failing project because of what has been invested so far. Availability heuristics, thinking a certain consequence of an action is more likely because it comes more easily to mind than other outcomes. Bounded rationality, people acting without complete information when they know that more information is available. Factoring in social benefits, a rising cohort of economists has emphasized the importance of factoring in inequalities in income distribution and social well-being when measuring the success of a given economic policy. Preeminent among them is Anthony Atkinson, 1944 to 2017, who focused on income redistribution within a given country, and Amartya Sen, professor of economics and philosophy at Harvard University, whose work on global inequality won him the Nobel Prize for Economics in 1998. Sen's work is also notable for reintroducing ethical behavior into its analysis. This concern ties Sen's thinking back to the writing of the earliest economic thinkers who saw overaccumulation of wealth by individuals or groups as ultimately harmful to society. The bottom line, economic theory grew out of society's need to account for resources, plan for the future, and exchange and allocate goods. Over time, these basic accounting tools grew into financial models of increasing complexity, blending the mathematics required to calculate compound interest with ethics and moral philosophy. Economics as a system to understand and control the material world and mitigate risk emerged and evolved across the globe in a staggered fashion. The Fertile Crescent and Egypt, China and India, ancient Greece, and the Arab world. As societies grew wealthier and trade grew more complex, economic theory turned to the mathematics, statistics, and computational modeling that economists use to help guide policymakers. The business cycle booms and busts, anti-inflation measures, and mortgage interest rates are outgrowths of economics. Understanding them helps the market and government adjust for these variables. Balancing out the mathematical modeling approach is the study of factors that are more difficult to quantify but crucial to understand, most notably the foibles and unpredictability of human psychology.